Welcome, everybody. Welcome to this first episode. Even though it says BrownsvilleTechLive.com, we're actually producing this show under 956live.com, but we're actually broadcasting across the other platform, which is BrownsvilleTechLive.com, as well as my personal page. And tonight we are kicking off a new series called Crisis on the Border. And for this first episode, I have the distinct honor of having Ms. Katy Presas back on the show. She's been on as a guest many times. And Katy, welcome back.
Thank you for having me on your show.
Yes, it's been a while. You've been everywhere. You've been on Captain Bob's show. You've been on Frankie's show. You've been everywhere. And I mean, ya te echaba menos. Dije,
Well, I like to be in your show.
Ya Katy ya no me quiere, ya quiere estar allá. What? I mean, no le puedo dar un free shrimp plate. So that's out of the question. Maybe free software, but that's as far as I can go.
No, no worries. As long as we can inform the public, that's it.
That's right. And originally, this show, we were going to concentrate on the ICE raids, the local ICE raids, and how they were affecting businesses. And of course, we're going to talk about that. But obviously, since then, there's been a lot been going on with regards to immigration and ICE raids all over the country, starting with Los Angeles. Katy, what's your take on what's going on? It's like everything has just exploded.
It's unbelievable. I thought we had left all of the riots and everything way back, when there was all these issues like in the 50s and the 60s, right?
Right.
And they seem to be coming back and escalating at another level. You have different groups out there, you have people just really becoming divided. There's a division. And I think there's a lack of respect amongst all of us together, right? I mean, we all have an opinion.
Right.
I think we all have our feelings and we all need to understand, have the humanitarian side of us, right?
Right.
I think there's always a way to do it. And as long as people are given that information, properly and it's just, I think immigration needs to be the processing of these people that want to be here or part of this country, right? Will follow the due process. I don't think a lot of us are happy to what we're seeing, right? There's so many things that are happening that a lot of us don't agree to, and I think that there's supposed to be a better way to do things.
Right.
That's how I feel. It's creating chaos from one end of the country to the other end. I mean, this is where they say this land is my land, land is your land, right?
Right.
I mean, it's like if you relate to that song, right?
Right.
But it started on the West Coast, right?
Right.
And then all of a sudden it leads up to Colorado, another area, right? And right before this, right, we had that shooting in Colorado, right? Which was more of a hate, right? So what's becoming of us?
Right. Do you think that, part of the problem is, well, social media plays a big part in a lot of this, back in the old days, people got their news from one or two sources. They got it from Walter Cronkite, or they got it from Brit Hume, or any of those guys. But now everybody seems to be a journalist these days, right? And everybody seems to be a reporter. And we live during a time that everybody carries a camera with them in their pocket, and there's so much video that is put out there, and unfortunately, people take video of what they want to take, and they have the ability to take it and edit it and publish just what they want to show, not necessarily the entire picture, right? And so, and the other thing about social media is I've always said, Katy, that, you've been on several podcasts before and you've seen the comments that come and go throughout those podcasts. And I've always said that social media is an unfortunate method for people to express themselves in ways they would never do so in a public forum or even in front of the person they're disagreeing with. Como que es más fácil aventar las piedras when you're behind the keyboard. They're called keyboard warriors, right?
And you know what? Which means that they don't have the
Yes.
to do it, right? I mean, if you're gonna be somebody that's gonna be outspoken, say it whether you're behind the scenes or in front of the scenes or behind a keyboard, but just say it, you know? I mean, be that person that's truly gonna be, but then again, I know that some of us are stronger than others, character-wise, right? It's just a natural born person that has that ability.
Yeah.
Not everybody has that. And I think those are things like you say, we have to, you know, accept that with media the way it is, right? I mean, look, I mean, you seldom see newspapers nowadays. And before you used to see everybody reading, you know, their newspapers at a restaurant, or you would get to somebody's house and somebody was reading the newspaper, you know?
Right.
I mean, but social media has really done good and damage at the same time.
Right. I mean, it is the new media, but it's a very dangerous media because, you know, everybody is out there spewing all kinds of stuff and stirring the pot, because that's what they're doing. They're actually stirring the pot, you know. I mean, one of the things, I mean, you've seen it here locally. I mean, you've seen how for a while there you had people reporting that ICE and the county sheriff's department were out there raiding somebody, which wasn't true. The county sheriff's department has not been raiding anybody, but people were putting that stuff out there. And my concern was that you could end up putting local law enforcement at risk, right? We know that that's a federal responsibility, right? But when you're out there saying that the county sheriff's department is out there doing this stuff and they're not, you're placing them at risk, right? Because no falta un loco que lo va a creer, and he's going to do something.
Y hay más locos que los buenos, es lo que pasa.
You know, but you know, what's your take, Kathy? I mean, do you think that these, and we'll talk a little bit about the local stuff. Do you think that these local raids have been targeted raids, or do you think that they've been dedazos, so to speak, somebody putting the finger? I mean, you heard about the infamous bakery down in Los Fresnos, right?
Yes.
You know? I mean, what do you think? I mean, and then of course, you know, we've had several restaurants that have closed. I think up to 10 recently locally because they claim they don't have any workers. I mean, what's your take on all this? Is it targeted? Is it somebody putting the finger? Is it really true that they're closing down because they don't have workers? Or is there some other reason? I have a suspicion it's some other reason. But anyway, I mean, what's your take? I mean, you're out there, you know.
It's sad because some of the restaurants that have closed, we've all been to one or another, right?
Right.
And yes, I mean, you can tell when they're local or when they're from across, right? And my respects, because they're hardworking people. They're trying to make a living where they don't have that in their own country, right? And it's easier for them to come here and hey, $50 a day goes a long way. $30 a day goes a long way for them across the border. And I really think that it's a combination of somebody that, pues ya sabes, you know how it is. People are so envious of a business opened up and, well, why are they opening up right next door, right? I mean, that's just the way it is, unfortunately. But I think that some of them are probably, you know, people calling and putting a finger on somebody. And at the same time, you know, ICE or immigration is saying, okay, this is where you got to target. This is where we've seen, or this is where we've gotten calls that this is where the people are working at. But I mean, what else can you say? I mean, there's a big difference to border towns, areas where we have more of the influx because it's so close to the border.
Right.
So do they realize, I mean, I don't think immigration or law enforcement is ignorant to where they don't understand or comprehend, hey, we see them, they eat out there too. You know what I mean?
Right. Absolutely.
I mean, so they're observing, they're watching, they're paying attention. And if this was coming and they knew, you don't think that they had been staking out these places for a while?
Yeah. Well, for example, there are like two restaurants downtown that recently said they were closing. But you and I both know that a lot of those restaurants were getting a rental subsidy, right? As part of their BCIC grant. Now, I have a suspicion that while the worker excuse is something they're putting out there publicly, I think that a lot of those rental subsidies probably went away. And the rent is high down there. It has to be because we know of one restaurant, a pizza restaurant that was down there, they lost their rental subsidy. And the next thing you know, they tried opening over here by Spring Mart. And then the next thing I know, they're not even open anymore. So I'm questioning, why are we even giving rental subsidies, for God's sakes? I wish there was rental subsidies when I had a business. By the way, were you offered a rental subsidy by some chance?
Nope. Nope, I didn't meet the qualifications. I did not fall in their criteria, I guess. I don't know, but
Yeah,
the rents are very expensive when it comes to the buildings within the community. I mean, it depends. I mean, downtown, you can pay as much as $4,000 for probably 2,000 square feet.
that's crazy.
And $4,000, if you don't have the income revenue of the business, where is that gonna put you? Where is that gonna place you?
Right,
And downtown doesn't have the volume of people that we are supposed to be having.
right, right. I mean, look, I've seen probably a lot of activity maybe on Fridays, on Saturdays. I mean, I was in shock by one of the restaurants that was a brunch area. I mean, they always had business, but they claimed that, they had to shut down. And the story was is because of they didn't have workers. I mean, I'll tell you right now that in my case, I've been trying to find somebody to cut my lawn for the last 3 weeks. And the guy that cut my lawn the last time, he's not doing it anymore. I called the guy today that had done my lawn the last time. I can't find him. So I don't know. I don't know if this is really, I mean, tendrán miedo que somebody's going to pick them up. I have no idea, but it's sure
Well,
affecting, it's sure
it's
affecting my
affecting
lawn.
everybody. It's affecting all of us. It's affecting, like you say, people that had somebody to do their lawn and my sister also. I mean, she has had or has. I mean, she hasn't been able to communicate with him either. And but it's sad because people are working hard. It's helping those of us that need that help, right? Because we don't have time to do it. And let me tell you, construction, I'm a realtor.
Yeah,
Construction is dead right now.
yeah,
So we're at the point that whatever got built, whatever was finished, we're lucky.
yeah,
And whoever's got homes that are already built, I foresee it going into a cycle like you remember the COVID when there was no material and the homes that were already built, those were the ones that were selling faster. There
right,
was all these buyers, but there was no, well, okay, so now we have homes and the homes that are right now for sale, those are gonna go out because there's not gonna be anything else.
right,
Construction is gonna get more expensive because the labor, your locals, the ones that do have, the citizenship or social or paperwork that is required, they're gonna require to get paid good money, not just your regular $100 a day and come and be my, come and hammer the hammer, and
right,
put up my walls. I mean, there's a lot of factors that are gonna take place, and we're gonna have to understand how to navigate it and what's gonna happen. And is the president gonna, be able to sit down and have a conversation with all the people that are required to be able to say, hey, we got to figure something out.
right. Well, one of the things that happened this week, actually a couple of days ago, is you there, Kati?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, hold on. I think you froze on me, but it's because you're behind the screen here. Give me a second. There we go. Sorry about that. Yeah, I had to move you here. All right. So basically, let me see if I can. Basically, there was a local leadership response. Obviously, two of our leaders, Mayor Villalobos from McAllen and Norma Sepulveda, I think.
The
Yeah, from Harlingen, talked about this a little bit. And according to Mayor Villalobos, and by the way, all the mayors were in this supposed conference, but these were the only two that decided to talk about it. So I'm not exactly sure where the rest of them were. But basically, Villalobos pointed out that there is definitely an effect, as you mentioned, of economic. Um, it's
Impact.
affecting economic impact. There's construction that's being affected. There's restaurants that are being affected, and of course, Sepulveda said the same thing. I mean, obviously there is a concern, right? And I understand both sides of the issue. I mean, I understand those that are against illegal immigration. I understand it. And I also understand the need of business. I mean, there are businesses that depend on some of this labor, right? Because we've got to be honest with ourselves. A lot of these jobs that these people do are jobs that unfortunately Americans aren't willing to
Gonna do
do.
it.
They're not. I mean, that's just reality. No van a ir a piscar, tomate ever.
They're not gonna be out in the heat.
They're not.
They're not gonna be out in the heat. They're not gonna be out picking up trash. They're not gonna be out doing the hard labor.
Right.
You gotta give credit where credit needs to be given.
Yeah.
I mean, it is reality check, and if we don't understand or we don't know how, a while back it was A Day Without Mexicans. There was a movie, no? I think there was a movie. It was
I
called A
think
Day
I
Without
I
Mexicans.
think so. I think there was a movie, or actually it was a day. You know.
So I remember this because my sons were younger and we were up in Dallas in Richland Hills. And at that time we had Mayor Trevino, our mayor, and the Richland Hills mayor was Trevino.
Right.
And he looked at our bus because they were all golfers and they were all Hispanic golfers.
Right.
So the mayor comes up to the bus. That's why I'm sharing this because he comes and he says, what is this? You all are Mexican golfers? And the coaches didn't take that very well, right? Like, well, what are you saying? We can't golf? You know? And he says, where did all these Mexican golfers come from? And one of the
Yeah.
coaches says, from the Rio Grande Valley, sir, from the valley.
Yeah.
And I mean, but you see how, and this, I mean, Richland Hills in Texas is a very wealthy area, extremely wealthy. But every child that got off that bus with their golf clubs was Hispanic.
Right. Right.
And so at that time, he told us, oh, you know what? This reminds me, what would we do a day without Mexicans?
Yeah. Exactly. Well, it's getting kind of nasty in a way. The argument is, and I found this a little offensive, but here we go. Somebody put this out saying, hurry, Maria, Sister Norma Pimentel has a soft bed, a, I can't remember,
Soft bed, warm tamales, frijoles, y
Yeah.
arroz for us at the Catholic Charities brothel in McAllen,
Right.
Texas.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like they're criticizing, right, the Catholic charities, obviously,
Mhm.
because because of NGOs, and let's talk a little about NGOs. I can tell you firsthand that I was a government contractor. I worked for an NGO for about 3 years, and there is no doubt. And at the time, this particular NGO was responsible for providing sheltering, feeding, and eventually locating um, relatives of undocumented children that crossed the border. Okay,
Mhm.
and I basically worked in the technology area. This was around 2020. Okay, around the start of COVID, and so I worked for them, and I was responsible for the IT department at the time. Over 2,000 employees, right? COVID hit, and of course, that brought a whole other situation. But one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is that the amount of money that that the federal government spends on undocumented children, right, and illegal aliens is astronomical. We're talking in the millions of dollars, Kati. We're talking about places that are built that have that have Wi-Fi and computers for all those children when our own kids struggled during COVID. They had to line up at the local schools to get a hotspot. They had to get a hotspot because they didn't have internet back then. Okay, millions of dollars that are spent. Some of these places had swimming pools, Scotty.
Hmm.
Swimming pools. It's incredible. Thousands, I mean, millions of dollars being spent. If the American people understood how much money is spent, they'd be appalled. They'd be appalled. It's incredible.
And it's a shame because when we are our own people are needing it more than anything, you know?
Exactly.
I mean, it's let's take care of our people here already. Let's make sure that our children have what is necessary. Every child. I mean, it's it's like we were giving more to these people than our veterans. Look at how
Exactly.
long our veterans take to get a service. And let me tell you, veterans have a lot of pride. They don't like to be like, feel that they're a burden to us, right? They
Right.
want to be strong. They want to be that they can and they don't need from us, but they do need of us. They went to go out there. They did what they needed, what they swore to do and to protect us. And but yet all this money going over here. And I think that's why it triggered a lot of things like where did all this money go? And it was
Right.
not 1 year, but it was for year after year after year.
Oh, I can tell you that it's gone on for years. In fact, I can tell you that the CEOs of two of the local NGOs have made millions of dollars. Millions of dollars. Astronomical amount of money. And that's not including everything else, right? But there's a ton of money being wasted in this effort. And it's sad. I mean, I got the and that's not to diminish the situation. I mean, I remember when we would have to go into the areas where some of these kids were in. Gati, these kids were toddlers. Some of them were toddlers that they were given to a coyote. The parents gave the coyote money to cross this kid over. These are babies, 3, 4, 5 years old, and they've got nobody. And then the other problem, as you well know, the reason why the airlines down here have made a shitload of money, and excuse my language, okay, you and I both know that the majority of those tickets flying out of the valley, out of the three airports for a long time, were all these people getting free tickets to the upper part of the United States. We know this. Delta Airlines admitted it that a majority of their revenue here was due to all the
Undocumented.
all the undocumented. In fact, probably about 2 years ago, I recall the airport terminal had just opened here in Brownsville. Okay, beautiful building, by the way, beautiful building. They had spent a lot of money on landscaping, and it turned out that somebody had done a video of these undocumented workers that were down there sleeping in front of the airport, sleeping like homeless people in front of the airport, and they were stomping on all this landscaping and stuff like that. And it was like, really? Really? I mean, we spent all this money on landscaping for somebody to do that. And I did cause an uproar, and I know some people in the city didn't like that I reported that I published it out. But, come on. I mean, you got to have a little respect, right? I mean, and so that was bad, right? But there is a lot. I mean, look at the downtown parking garage. That was another one that was being used. Remember that?
Yep. Yep.
You know,
That's another place
I
too.
mean, I mean, there's a struggle. There's a struggle to park down there for a while. We couldn't use it. We couldn't use it because it was being used for that, right?
Yep.
Now, I don't know if the city was getting any money from the federal government for doing it, but obviously, it wasn't meant for what it was supposed to be built for. So, but anyway, so what's I mean, obviously, this is a bad uh posting, right? I mean, I have deep respect for Sister Pimental. I do, but obviously, the temperature is going up and everybody's getting hit left and right. But one of the things that kind of was funny today, I posted it. Some people didn't like it, but I didn't do it because I was being political. But obviously, this one was kind of funny. Don't forget where you come from. They have a guy with the MAGA hat eating el
And then
nopal.
no fun.
Nopal no más enfrente, pero down to the nose. I mean, what's your take? I mean, is it wrong for people of Hispanic origin here to be against illegal immigration? I mean, what's your take?
I, I think there's two things that we need to understand here. And this is because I've asked myself over and over, and I've asked people, and because we're all gonna have our own opinion. If the people back in the older days, in the 70s, in the 60s, in the 80s, right, came into this country with the proper point of entry, right? In other words, they came right, and then they get married, right, to an American citizen. The American citizen says, okay, you're going to be in this country. You need to become an American citizen, and you need to respect this country. And my mom is a perfect example. She's no longer a patriot of Mexico, and she was born in Mexico. Her umbilical is in Mexico. But she says that the flag that she will forever wave with pride and with honor and with respect will forever be the American flag.
Mm-hmm.
Her husband, my dad, was a military husband. And she says, this country, I came to this country with the opportunity to be able to work, to contribute, to be part of society, to pay my taxes, to do whatever I had to do, and to respect. And I think that right now, and the reason is because I showed her, look what they're doing here in America. And she goes, well, where are they, in America or in Mexico? This is an 89-year old.
Right.
And why are they waving the Mexican flag? And why do they want to be here? Why don't they go back to Mexico? And I'm like, and this is a lady that came from Mexico in the early 60s,
Mm-hmm.
in 1960, basically.
Right.
And she was so sad to see people from Mexico doing this. And I'm getting her input, right? Because she's lived longer than I have.
Right.
And he says, mijita, my father was a bracero, and he always said, you want to come to this country, you make sure you work hard, you respect the country, and you become an American citizen, and you wave that flag with pride.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I mean, nobody's saying that you should forget,
your country, right?
right, right. Nobody says that you should forget your country of origin, right? And nobody says you shouldn't celebrate culture through Charo Days. Nobody's saying that, right? But obviously, there comes a point in time where an individual that ends up in this country needs to, I hate to use the word assimilate because that's I don't like that word, but you should make efforts to learn the language and learn the culture, not because they want you to forget where you came from, right? But basically because it helps. I mean, knowing English, writing, reading, and speaking in English will help that individual, especially if they eventually go further up north, right?
It
So
goes a long way.
it goes a long way. And so I think that's where this gets lost in the idea that we're trying to convince people that they should erase their identity. By no means. I am, God, I don't know what generation, but I'm further down the generation pipe. I mean, my maternal grandparents did originally come from Mexico. My paternal grandparents, my paternal great grandparents came from Mexico. So I'm kind of like, I mean, I don't have as much of an identity as maybe some of them did, right? But I think it's important that they learn the English language. Now, I will say this: it wasn't until I graduated from high school and started working after college that I learned the power of my bilingualism, right? Because now I had customers that were international, right? And some spoke Spanish. So I use that to my advantage now. And even now within my job is, because I get all the South American accounts now. Why? Because I know how to speak Spanish and English together back and forth, right? But for those coming from south to north, they should make efforts to learn English because it's going to take them a long way, you know.
And you see, and I believe that right now there's a group of lost identities
Yeah,
where they don't know, first of all, they don't even, and we see it a lot in border towns. They don't really speak the proper Spanish and they don't speak the proper English. They're confused with their own identity. They're just lost. They can't. I mean, I'm very blessed, and I am just, I can speak both languages very well, and
right.
I get excited because my mother used to teach across the border. She was a
Right.
teacher in Matamoros. But she always said, don't confuse this and that with, like a perfect word in Spanish, parquéate. No, 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 there's no such thing as parquéate. Estacionate. Estaciona el auto. Estaciona. In other words, she always corrected us.
Right.
And so I was very, you know, I'm very grateful to her that she wanted for us to speak both languages. Spanish because my maternal mother, but my dad spoke both languages, not my mom.
Yeah.
So we learned the Spanish from my mom at a very young age.
Right.
And my dad said, you go to school, you speak only English.
Right.
Do not speak Spanish.
Well,
At
keep in
home,
mind that back in the
no.
old days, they you couldn't speak Spanish in school,
So,
remember?
and
I
you know
mean,
what? I loved it because we were able to, to really learn the language and focus on the primary language. And
right.
that's what my dad said. You learn to speak the Spanish with your mom. That's her job to teach you the Spanish language. But my country needs for you to speak the English language.
Right.
So remember, at school, you respect the language of America, and it's English.
And by the way, I mean you've been a school board member and stuff like that, and of course, bilingual education, as noble as it as it as it has been as a program, I think a lot of times it has actually hurt more than helped, you know.
Because of the financials. Because remember, the longer you keep the students in the bilingual program,
Hmm.
the longer the money comes in for the district.
Yeah.
And my point was always, no, 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 no. I want those children to be out of the bilingual program as quickly as I can
Right.
because I want them to master the language. And I was a bad guy. And then they would grow up and they couldn't speak one or the other. They couldn't comprehend one or the other. Their
Right.
comprehension was so confusing because they would mix the languages.
Right. Right. Oh, I can tell you that, I see that in the workplace, right? Some of those younger workers, make them give you a report, and you spend half of the time being the English teacher correcting the report because you can't even use it, right?
And isn't it a shame?
It
Isn't it
is.
bad?
It
I
is a
mean,
shame, right?
let me tell you, some of our graduates, a certain percentage, would be taking remedial courses.
Right.
Remedial courses.
Right.
Okay, so you were in the school district this long, but then you go to college, okay, no, let's go back because we need to give you remedial courses because you're not ready.
Right. I mean, I can understand a remedial course like in math, right?
Yes,
But
yes.
not in English,
Mm-mm.
not in literature. I mean, that should not be the case, right? But, you know, but let's flip over to a couple of other screens here, and as you spoke about, earlier, here's a picture of some folks in Los Angeles, I believe, with the flying the Mexican flag, and they just lit a car on fire. I mean, you know, first of all, why are you flying the Mexican flag to begin with? You're not changing anybody's mind. You're making it worse, I think, you know?
I think that's a disrespect to our to just you know, especially to our military armed forces, you know. I mean, they're out there making sure that we can all sleep, we can all have safe, we can be safe, we can, you know, and then here we are. I mean, is that something just because for mis pantalones, because I'm a Mexican? Please get out of my face because I don't, you know, and yo tengo nopal, yo soy mexicana, ¿verdad? Por descendencia, but my umbilical is here in the state of Texas.
Right.
So,
Well, here's
but
another one. Here's another one that where they were on top of the freeway, and I guess they were throwing all kinds of rocks and bricks. I mean, it's just incredible, you know. And um, I mean, here's another one. I think. Hold on, let me see. Where's the other one? Ah, and this is a little concerning, right? I mean, when you see these kind of pictures, we should
mhm,
not. I mean, this kind of reminds you of a some other country, right? Where you have, you know, police and soldiers in riot gear. I mean, it's just very sad that this kind of stuff is happening in this country like that. You know,
mhm.
it's just sad. It really is, you
I
know, and
believe people are promoting it. There's more of a promoting because when I started to see boxes of vehicles dropping off, delivering those masks, gas masks, that who's paying for that? Is it the
probably
city?
pro
Is
probably
it
radical
the,
groups, you
there
know.
you go. So now we're getting into that, like, okay, so these radical groups, they're only hindering our, you know, the society and the areas that get these people excited and or even the people getting paid. Maybe they're getting paid to be there. I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, you've seen it before, you know, a few years ago with MoveOn.org, you know, when they were
Mm-hmm.
having those protests and
Yep.
stuff like that. And, you know, it's just incredible. But, you know, let's even go further. I've got a few more things here. We've actually got some live video. Hold on one second. We'll go ahead and play it. A couple of TikTok videos. Hold on. Let me move you over to the other side so you don't get frozen on me here. There you go. All right, so here we go.
With at least 56 people arrested this weekend as they rallied against Donald Trump's nationwide immigration raids. Authorities declared downtown LA an unlawful assembly area and ordered anyone in the vicinity to leave immediately as they deployed rubber
Oh
bullets and
my.
tear gas on
And
demonstrators.
can you imagine the
Rioters
smell
have
of
set
all that?
driverless Waymo
Oh,
cars
that
on
guy
fire,
was the one
looted
that.
stores, and created blockades on the 101 freeway. Trump ordered in
You can hear the video,
2,000
right?
National Guard troops,
Mm-hmm.
placed
Okay.
500 Marines on standby, and called for the arrest of anyone wearing face masks. The conflict
Mm-mm.
And of course, there's somebody with a camera phone that was recording.
Everybody with their phones.
Everybody with their phones, you know, stirring the pot even more. You know, I mean, you can't stop people from taking video, but obviously the videos aren't helping, right? They're just stirring the pot even further.
I wonder if these people work. Don't they have a job? Don't they have an obligation? Don't they have? I mean, who's got the time to be out there? I mean, there's so much to do and to contribute in a good way. And I also got to see some videos of how much graffiti they were doing and why? Why destroy your community?
Ah, it's crazy. And look at this one.
From Atlanta.
Mm. And then children
York
in
City,
in
where
those,
more than 80
why would
people
you
were arrested.
expose children in those
And
types of
Chicago,
groups?
where police
Right.
clashed with demonstrators and several more were detained. To
I mean, this is the
Texas,
kind of stuff you saw in other countries,
where police
right?
pinned
Yeah,
protesters
yeah.
to the
I
ground.
mean, I'll be honest with you. I've
And
never
Governor
seen
Greg
this
Abbott
before.
said he would
I'm
deploy
too
the National
young
Guard
I mean, I
ahead
was
of a
not even
planned
alive during
protest
the
in San
1960s,
Antonio.
so
Across
see
the
any of that
country,
stuff,
anti-ICE
right?
protesters gathered in the
Um,
streets in
so for
solidarity with
me,
those in
it's
Los
kind of
Angeles.
new, right? I mean, I've read
Yeah.
about
Yesterday
it.
in LA,
I've
protesters
seen old
continued
video,
marching
but I
against
can't
ongoing
relate
immigration
to it
raids.
because I
And the
was not
city's
even
mayor, Karen
alive.
Bass,
But
declared a
You
curfew
you
in
know
certain
that
parts of
in
downtown
in the
beginning at
60s,
8 p.m.
we used to go visit
Last night,
we used to go to
California Governor
Houston.
Gavin
And my
Newsom
dad, well, we
again
were going from
condemned
the
the
valley, and there
administration's
was
decision to
areas that
send
we
in the
would go
National
by,
Guard and the
Sinton,
Marines.
Robstown, all those areas. My dad used to say, you got to go to the restroom because we can't stop anywhere. Remember, we
Right.
cannot use bathrooms there. So, that's why I keep saying, stop going into the getting a flash from the past. Just get that past us, and I think we're going into that right now.
Yeah, look at
Oh
this.
my God, look at the harm that they did to the police department. The insurances, that's why they kill us when it comes to insurances, because of
Right.
all, they say the losses. I mean, people don't see all the damage that comes from that.
Yeah, they were throwing Molotov cocktails to the police
Wow,
officers. Yeah.
wow.
Here's the guy with the flag.
No, my mom had it. My mom had a fit with that one. She was the one. What is he doing with that? I don't know, Mom. I'm not in LA.
Yeah,
I don't
this
want to
one-
be in LA.
hear this one, mira,
You can't kick us out of the land that was ours! Donald Trump! Fascism! Let our people free! ¡Suelta nuestra gente!
My God.
What's the windblower for?
Just for the fucking tear gas to blow it back at those motherfuckers!
No, 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 no. What a shame.
There's one here. This is the one where they threw the bricks at the police. Wait to see what happens in the back end of that police.
Wow.
All right, guys.
Oh my. What? Look at how many units that got destroyed there. Wow.
Someone has been
Holy cow, they're throwing bricks at the police.
It's pretty
It
depressing.
is.
Sad.
It is. Now, I understand that there's people that obviously have problems with Donald Trump. I mean, there are people obviously that do, right? And one of the things that they question is the authority of the president, right? And one of his arguments is that he believes that he has the right under the Insurrection Act, right?
Mhm.
But the problem, and it's somewhat of a problem. Let me where the heck is it? Oh, there it is. Yeah. So basically there was a law called the Insurrection Act, which was passed in 1807, way before you and I
Any of us.
were born, right? But basically what it was an act that it's federal law that empowers the President of the United States to nationally deploy the U.S. military and to federalize the National Guard units of the individual states in specific circumstances, such as suppression of civil disorder, of insurrection, and of armed rebellion. There's people that say that this is not an armed rebellion, but obviously the videos that we've just seen, right? I mean, it's pretty much a mob, right?
Mhm.
So, I mean, the president believes that he's got the authority to do this, right? And by the way, for a lot of people that aren't aware, there are times in history where the Insurrection Act was invoked. It was invoked during the 1960s by John F. Kennedy and Lyndon Johnson, and it's primarily because of the civil rights era, right, where the South was obviously, impeding the rights of Black Americans, and of course, right after the assassination of MLK,
Martin Luther King.
right? So they invoked the Insurrection Act at that time, and then in the 1980s, Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush basically also invoked it, I believe, when there was a issue with Cuban deportees in a
Mm-hmm.
in a deportation facility in Alabama, and right after the Rodney King, uh, you know, beatings in
Incident.
L.A. Right,
Mm-hmm.
so the Insurrection Act has been invoked right before. The problem that this act has, and that's why people contest it, is that later in the same century, in the 1800s, there was the Posse Comitatus Act of 1878. And what this act was is it was signed into law in 1878. It's a federal law that restricts the use of federal military personnel for domestic law enforcement within the United States. It was enacted to prevent the military from being used as a civilian police force, especially in the South after
The
the Civil
civil.
War. And what happened, if you recall, is right after the South lost the Civil War, we went through a period of Reconstruction, right? And the Republicans at the time, because as people know, the Republican Party was the anti-slavery party, and the Democratic Party at the time was the slavery party. And what it was is Abraham Lincoln, followed by Andrew Johnson, started a program of Reconstruction in the South to rebuild the South, but in addition to force the South to abandon some of the slavery,
Labor.
yeah, that was going on. And so they appointed a lot of Republican governors, a lot of Republican politicians to enforce, this. And as and of course later on during the century, they passed this law to prevent the federal government from doing that again, because there was a lot of animosity, there was a lot of resentment in the South for losing the Civil War, and of course losing their way of life. Because whether slavery was a bad thing or not, it was a way of life in the South. It was an economic thing. It's unfortunate they had to use it, but they used it for cotton picking, they used it for all
Mm-hmm.
kinds of stuff. That's just a fact, right? And so the South was not happy, and as a result, this act was passed that no longer could the federal government use the military for law enforcement. And that's where the argument comes in right now, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Is the military supposed to be used in this particular case? Well, one law signed earlier says yes, and the other law says
Says,
no, right?
so there's a contradictory
There's
there. And
contradictory. I mean, as you know, anytime the military has come down has been for support operations with regards to immigration. The majority of the work is done, if not all of it, by U.S. Customs, right?
mm-hmm.
And enforcement. So, I mean, I understand the people that are opposed to this, why they're arguing that the military should not be used. But the problem is, as you well saw by the mobs that we saw on video, the police can't handle it. Now, do I believe that the police should be involved? Should our local police here in Brownsville be involved in immigration raids? No. I think they've got better things to do than having to do that. They don't have the resources. We don't have the resources to assist the federal government. In fact, the way I see it, it's a federal government problem. They caused the problem. They need to fix it themselves. Right?
They need to use federal
Right. I mean, it's
federal funds and federal officers.
Federal
Very
officers
simple.
do it. I mean,
That's
we've
it.
got our police officers here have enough on their plate as it is. Now,
We
obviously,
have our own issues.
yeah,
We have
and
our own
so
issues.
I don't know. I mean, it's one of those iffy things. Obviously in Los Angeles, the LAPD is not going to be able to handle that on their own. I mean, obviously, we saw by the videos that that's
Well,
just
look at their population. Just they are so overwhelmed and with so much population. It's unbelievable.
right.
I mean, I don't know, it's beyond me, and I think that a lot of it is where I think it needs to be this is like our school board right now.
Yeah.
The federal, it's like our local school board, right? You have that division, they can't really make a decision. And it's so sad because what you see locally, you see it at federal level.
Right.
And it's unfortunate because the citizens are the ones that are taking the blows, you know?
One thing I wanted to ask you about tonight, Kati, because you were on the school board, and look, one of the things that I mean, I remember going across the border early in the morning, driving over, for work purposes, and coming from that direction on any given morning, de allá para acá, you see a ton of vans with school kids, Kati. Okay, I see school buses from IDEA that on any given day they turn right there on the street. What's it called? The street by Fort Brown, by the Civic Center.
The Elizabeth
Yeah.
Street or
Bueno,
yeah.
antes that street, is it Rid? No, it's not Ridley. I don't know which one it is, but it's the one. It's the one right before you get to the Civic Center. As you're going in and you go to the TSE Performance Center.
Okay,
Every
yeah,
day
yeah.
se estaciona a bus or two, y ahí están dropping the kids, and the kids are all going back to Mexico. Now, my question to you is, are those kids, number one, citizens? Number two, are they paying, is anybody paying taxes for educating these kids? I mean, tell us what,
Okay.
I mean, it is a caravan. It is a caravan. I mean, I even got to the point where I thought maybe I should buy a couple of vans myself and start
To work.
yeah, I mean, talk to us. What is going on there?
You know that,
I mean, share what you can with us. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to ask.
unfortunately, we were always told that no child can be denied an education in this country, right? That every child deserves that opportunity to get an education because through education, we overcome poverty, right?
Right.
And that's basically what the education system is for. And we were told you cannot deny it. They have an address, they can prove the address. You have to, give them an education. Okay, so these students, some of them, well, they were born here, but they live in Matamoros, right?
Right.
But they were born here. But because it's too expensive for their parents to afford to live here, so what do? They go and come every day. So, and it's unfair because who's paying the taxes? We are,
Correct.
the ones that live here. So where do we draw the line, right? When are we going to figure this out to where we're going to put or implement, policies or laws that we can say, I'm sorry, this is, I pay, you pay, very simple, right? Now we have those charter schools. Now we have, the vouchers. So now they even get the opportunity to come and go to private school. And what
Right.
about our kids in America? What about parents that would love their children to take the opportunity of a voucher? I mean, I know that the voucher has certain prerequisites and all that, and you have to abide by that. But, remember, you have children that were born here that are American citizens that live across, and then you have those that came to this country that undocumented, they have to get an education.
Yeah. Well,
So
so are you saying that the voucher program that was just passed that people from over there will be able to be eligible for a voucher?
well, if they're American citizens, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah.
And if they have proof of an address of a family member, right?
Right.
Where do you live? What's your residence? Oh, here's my residence. I'm staying with my aunt and she's, she's the one that has me, I'm in her custody and okay, let's get it going. They find the loopholes, they find a way to navigate it and get it done.
Yeah.
So
Now, do those students count as, do they count with regards to any reimbursement from the state? You know how, what is it that they say that, the state pays X amount of dollars per child? Do those count
Yeah.
as well?
Well, the average daily attendance is the way it's figured out through the public school system. You have the average daily attendance.
Mhm.
So every child that comes to school on a daily basis, the district gets reimbursed, gets funding for that. Right?
Regardless
And
of their citizenship.
yes,
Out of sight, out of mind, so to speak.
out of mind, exactly. And then, well, no longer there was a question about, are they going to be getting federal funds? How's it going to be handled? Is the state going to handle the federal funding? Because you have your departments that are federally funded.
Yeah.
You have your special needs, special ed program, you have your food service, right? Because you got to feed the children, and then you have your bus for transportation.
Right.
So, and then you have your local taxpayers' dollars. That's where a lot of the people would get upset, is why are our taxpayers' dollars servicing these children that are coming from across the border?
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's just a lot of things that still need a lot of work, on, and it's through having the right people in the right groups that can be, able to understand how it can get done, where it's a fair, across the board for all parents. I mean, it's like you and I pay all these taxes, but yet, even my mom, 89 years old, she's still paying taxes for her property. She's got
Right.
no kids going to school. So is
Right.
that fair? Is that just?
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things, is that, there just seems to be a level of unfairness, It seems that everybody else seems to be getting a fair share of the pie, Now, there's also another area, and I was talking to somebody about this the other day, is that, I was telling somebody, well, a lot of times I see a lot of people come from other countries that are much hungrier than our own kids. They're going for the high-end degrees, the STEM degrees, right? Y acá nosotros, los huercos de nosotros, no quieren ir a la escuela.
Están chiflados. They're spoiled.
No quieren-
Some of our children are spoiled, and they don't take education seriously.
Yeah.
But you have students from the Middle East, you have students from other countries that are so hungry to get an education and get ahead. And because you know what, in their country, they know what it is to
Right.
have real poverty and not have food or just live in the conditions that, I mean, come on, when I was back in the school board, I have not seen the data lately, but when I was back on the school board, 87% of our students were under low socioeconomic disadvantage. 87% of the population of BISD.
Right. Right. I mean, it just almost seems, and then we get shocked, right? We get shocked when somebody from somewhere else becomes a millionaire or whatever, right? But it seems like these days, I don't see, kids wanting to do a whole lot, and it just, I mean, they're happy to be baristas at Starbucks. And look, I'm not knocking baristas at Starbucks, okay? I'm not knocking that. But you can't be upset, right, when somebody else that may be of a different color or of a different ethnicity takes your job, right? Because you
No.
didn't study for it.
Exactly. You want it, work hard at it, and dedicate yourself and just stay focused, and you're gonna get it done.
Right.
But our children down here,
Yeah, and you know what? But yes, I mean, we see it here down here, but I can tell you that it's the same thing with a lot of kids up north también. Hay muchos gringos que they'd rather not go to school.
I had a question once when I was up at a national conference, and I mean, it just came to my mind. I asked a couple of board members from Alabama, right?
Yeah.
And from Mississippi, and said, why is it that Black artists can rap and music and their lyrics and man, they nail that. And why is it that they're failing in class?
Yeah.
why is it that they can, and then I turn around and said, maybe your teachers need to also rap in the class, so they can get the,
Get the
not,
material.
I mean, I don't know, it was kind of odd for me because it was like, they're so good at that, why can't they, you know? I mean, it's just, I don't know if it's just something that they develop on their own, or it's just a gift. I mean, I don't know, but they
Well,
would fail.
I tell you what, I have there's a lady that sings at my church and she's black. Yeah, I'll tell you what, I prefer her singing versus anybody else. No, hombre. I was disappointed when she moved over to the other campus. Porque no, hombre, she got on. Y pues no, hombre, it was like seeing Aretha Franklin, you know. But
But you
no, I
see,
mean it's just we can't be we can't just be upset when some of these things happen. Our kids, we don't encourage our kids to pursue an education and even sometimes the right education.
the right education. There's countries that by the time that child is already turning, I believe it's 8 years old. I can't remember if it was Singapore or Germany. And they give them a test to see what's their strength, right? And
Right.
they start gearing them in that direction. If it's math, they gear them in that engineering. They start gearing them in that direction. And then if it's writing or anything, they start gearing them in, and their pathway is already being, directed through the process of their education. And I'm here like, and let me tell you, Mexico is very good when their students come into the US with math, man, they're
Oh yeah.
they're greedy.
Well,
Extreme, and
well, the Mexican president, the current Mexican president, I saw a video a few months ago where she said that Mexico outputs the most engineers in the world. The most engineers in the world. Imagine
wow,
if they were able to retain, and the issue that they have is they can't keep their people, right?
no,
All right. Imagine
no.
if they did, where they would be.
Oof, Mexico would be a leading country at
Ex-
another level. They have oil, they have silver, they have the vegetation. I mean, you name it, they
yeah,
have everything. But because of all the garbage that they have amongst leaders and groups and cartel, that's their downfall.
yeah,
The mordida, the
yeah,
mordida. That's what
yeah,
it is.
yeah.
The
I mean,
bite.
it's incredible. It's totally incredible, but it is concerning. And then there's another thing coming down the horizon that a lot of people don't realize is artificial intelligence. I mean, a lot of people don't realize that this technology is getting better and better every day, and there could be jobs today that may not exist in the future.
Oh, we've been told since, you know, when the year 2000 hit, districts were being, told year conference after conference, prepare yourselves. AI is coming. Prepare yourself with internet services. All this stuff about COVID and all that. In 2010, we were told you all better be prepared for internet for the day that you guys cannot send your kids to school, to a classroom.
Right, right. And there could be many reasons beyond a pandemic, right? But I mean,
Yep.
one of the things that I found kind of appalling back during the COVID era is how unprepared a lot of our teachers were when it came to holding a simple Zoom call, right? That was new to them. That was new to them, right?
Yep.
But it was required, right? It was required, and now it's kind of a standard thing. Everybody Zooms and everybody con- uh, video conferences. But back then, I mean, it was a struggle, especially for some of the older educators. It
Yes, it was
definitely
like,
was. Uh,
yes, I know. It's like, how are we gonna do this? There was fear, there was panic,
yeah.
because they didn't know how it was gonna happen or how it was
Well, I
gonna
mean,
take.
I remember, back when I was a lot younger, and I was a young 24-year-old going into a company and bringing technology to transform the operation. I remember getting opposition that Some people just didn't want to learn whatsoever. They resisted. I mean, they went even so far as to sabotage things so that the system wouldn't work.
Wow.
I mean, because people just are opposed to change, and but we have to prepare for it. And it's just unfortunate that we're still going through these things in this country the way we see right now.
Mm-hmm.
I do not know what the solution is. I mean, obviously, the president is determined to, continue cracking down on immigration, but I think, there's going to have to be some kind of middle ground somewhere, the needs of business versus the
Businesses
needs.
are going to hurt throughout the US. It doesn't matter what part of the US you're they're going to be hurting, construction, high roads, industrial construction, it's businesses. I
Right.
mean, I can't remember what company, and it was a big company that, has been in existence for many years. And I think ICE went in there and they took out 23,
Yeah.
So, but Tyson was one
Home
that they were.
Depot's another one. They've been hitting a lot of Home Depots.
Home Depots, because that's where the workers would go and get their materials, so they would go and do their side jobs and all that. I mean, I think somebody needs to, say, okay, we need to come to the table and we need to figure this out,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, and the problem, has always been is Congress's fault. This is all Congress's fault for not ever agreeing to immigration reform of some sort. They've been talking immigration reform back since Clinton was president,
Yep, since Clinton, yes,
right?
it's true. It's true.
And I mean, there hasn't been amnesty since Ronald Reagan signed the amnesty law
It's
back
been a
in.
long time since amnesty.
Right. And so but there has not been no type of immigration reform. Now, the question always lies is when it comes to the dreamers, right? The dreamers is, a lot of these kids, the way I see it, if they're here and they've gone through school, they've even gone to college and graduated, let's give them an opportunity to stay here. They can be productive citizens. They've already made they've already made the investment. Let's put them in the workforce and collect taxes.
I want them to pay taxes like I do. That's
Exactly.
it. Put
Right.
them in the workforce.
Right. And you heard the stories back in the days of the Iraq War, where these recruiters were recruiting these kids that were illegals to go into the military. And then they were being deported after they came back. In my opinion, the day they chose to war, the day they chose to wear the uniform of the United States and went to war to fight for it is the day they earned their citizenship.
They earn their citizenship right away,
Right away.
without any questions.
Without any question. I mean, nobody goes out there and puts themselves in harm's way for just because, right? So,
Yep.
it's a tough issue, and I feel for the government. I feel for the people, the people that are being affected, but these people that are out here doing this violence, I don't feel sorry for them.
No, I don't.
I mean, this is honestly, I don't even think they really care about these people. They're just out there wanting to stir the pot just because,
Yeah, they're those, they just don't care. I wonder if any of them really even work.
I don't know, but I mean, it's kind of like I don't even think some of them even know illegals to begin with, but I am them.
But they're in the group. They
They're in
just
the
want to
group.
be part of the group,
Yeah.
cause trouble.
All right. Well, we've gone on for exactly an hour and 8 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
Like it.
yeah, definitely. I definitely enjoyed having you on. I wanted to have this show for quite a while, but there was just no opportunities. I got wrapped up with all these elections, and I was trying to wade my way out of it as best as I could, and every time I tried stepping out, somebody would reel me back in, and so I'm kind of glad now that all of that is over. I took too much heat from all sides and all directions. I think right now I'm not getting no Christmas cards from Republicans or Democrats, you know. So,
You're on the bad list. You're on the
I'm on the
naughty
bad list right now,
for both sides. For
both
both
sides,
sides.
because everybody wants me to be on their side, you know. So,
You
yeah,
just let me be an independent thinker and let me decide when I go and I bubble the name.
right, you know.
Yeah.
Well, the good thing about this time around is, at least for these elections, we didn't have a whole lot of choices. You know, I get really frustrated when I get a ballot with eight judges that I don't even know who the heck they are up north. You know, I
Yeah.
get really frustrated by that. At least there it was the choices were small this time, so that's a good thing. But I'm glad it's over. To be honest with you, it took a lot. I mean, I started February and I ended towards the end of May, and I was just glad that that was it. You know,
Over and
so
done with.
over and done with. You know, so until the
Good.
next time around, whenever that is. You know, so. Anyway, Gati, I appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you.
It's not gonna be the last time. I've got a few more topics. I think that you'd be a definitely a good resource for. I just
Thank
just wanted
you.
to have this first one, and um,
My pleasure.
it was definitely.
Yes.
It's always great to have you on. Hopefully, I was a gracious host.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Always. Always.
So.
And
All righty.
we,
Well, have a great evening, everybody. Thank you for watching tonight's episode. Coming up next week, we've got our second episode of Doug's Dugout. We'll be looking at his Redbirds as well as the Rangers and the Astros and see how
oh,
they're
wow.
going. Yep. So we've got that
Awesome.
coming up this coming week. And then we're relaunching the Spin Zone, which is our Dallas Cowboys show, which is at season 3. So we definitely are starting season number 3. We're hoping that the Cowboys make it this year. And by the way, for those of you that don't know, this year we're having a giveaway of a Dallas Cowboy jersey, but this time it's completely free. There are no donations required. All you got to do is register as a follower and a subscriber on Brownsville Tech Live and on 956live.com. Once you are verified as a registered follower or subscriber, you'll automatically be entered, and then on September 4th, you will get a chance to be a winner of a Dallas Cowboy jersey when the Dallas Cowboys play the returning Super Bowl champs, the Philadelphia Eagles,
Eagles.
coming up on the 4th of September. We'll be announcing that either before the game starts or during halftime.
All right.
All right, Kathy.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody. We'll see y'all later.
Stay safe. Bye.
Bye-bye. You still on?